Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to my first impression slash review, not really sure which one, of Duelyst. Now, Duelyst is an interesting card game that has caught my eye recently. It's been around for quite a while, but it has caught my eye recently when a lot of my teammates in Spellweaver were playing Duelyst, so basically Snellion and Rajan. And I thought, yeah, I'll give the game a try. And what I discovered was that it's basically a hybrid of Scrolls, a game which I played quite a lot of, and Hearthstone, a game which I played so much of, it's in the title of my YouTube channel. So I thought I'd give the game a bash, and it's very good. So I'm going to go over as much as I can. I've played this game extensively over the last week, and I'm thinking of doing a couple streams for it to see how people react, because I think the game is really, really good and is one of the better card games I've played in a while. It's not flawless. No game is flawless. In fact, I think that Duelyst did something similar to what Spellweaver did, where they took a lot of ideas from other games, primarily Hearthstone, but, well, there's some from other games as well, but a lot of it's from Hearthstone, and it actually is to the point where they've copied Hearthstone to a detriment. They've taken some of the bad ideas from Hearthstone as well, which you'll see once I start getting into the actual features. So first things first, we'll just go into a sandbox mode game, which I think is really cool. It lets you just play two decks against each other, and you get to control both sides. And we're just going to show off how the game works just in sandbox, and then we'll look at some of the other things and then go from there. So you'll recognize this from Hearthstone. This is mulliganing. Now the way mana works is kind of weird, since I'll just talk about this. So there's a board state, which you see in the background, and going first you have 2 mana to start, going second you have 3. Now if I just do a mulligan here, keeping 2 drops so I can actually show how placement works, and yeah, just go for it. So the board state's an interesting thing, because some of you that have played Scrolls will recognize this kind of design. Now, it does work very differently. So you have both players, the heroes, they don't have any particular abilities, it's just the generic thing for the faction. There are 5 factions, I do believe, which is Lionar, Magmar, Abyssian, Songhai, Vitruvian, Vanar. So 6, yeah. There are 6 factions, and they all have the same heroes, just aesthetically changed. And they all have the certain theming. Now, the way this board state thing works is that you can move any unit within 2 spaces at once, if it's readied. And, well, when I have my turn, I'll be able to control the other side. And then you can attack. So it's a board state focused game. Now, creature summoning involves putting it anywhere adjacent to anything. So it's not just a creature. It's not just your general. You can place it next to a creature, and this lets you kind of span out your board, and it means that you have to be careful of stragglers from your opponent just randomly around. Now, what else I like about this particular setup is that the way card management works is very, very different from other card games. So first things first, if you want to, you can replace any card in your hand for another card, just a random card from your deck, and it doesn't put it on the bottom, it just shuffles your deck. And I think it works on the same system Hearthstone does, where your deck is completely randomized. It's not in order. So it's not like Spellweaver, which keeps it in order, or Magic, or things like that. It's like Hearthstone, where your entire deck is randomized. So if I just end the turn here, it will show how these wells work. And also at end of turn, which I don't think you can tell since it keeps switching my view, but you draw 2 cards at the end of each turn. So there's less top decking, kind of. You get to sift through your cards, but you also top deck 2 cards at the end of every turn. Which means that it encourages a lot of small plays to stabilize the board, since if you're drawing 2 cards a turn, you're only playing 1 a turn, you start overdrawing, and then you don't get new cards. You have a maximum hand size of 6, as you can see, and as a result you get overdrawing a lot, and you have to manage your hand size quite well. Now, these are mana springs. These are basically a coin from Hearthstone, but if you notice that going second you have an extra mana, but you're also closer to the first mana spring, which means if you have 2 2-drops, you can play 1 on the mana spring, get the extra mana, and then effectively get 4 mana on the first turn. Now, what I like about the Mana Spring system is that the way it seems to work in most games is that the first player, if they have a turn 1 drop, will get one of the Mana Springs, generally. The second player will get this Mana Spring, generally, and also this Mana Spring, well, depending on the way the first player plays. So what this does is it means that the first player has initiative, but then the second player has mana advantage, like a large mana advantage. But because your heroes can attack, you can attack things with your heroes and they have 2 attack, it ends up creating this weird sort of dynamic where depending on how both players play, having initiative is not dictated by who went first, which is a weird sort of dynamic, but I actually quite like the way they balanced it, and it's something you can only do on a board state. Now, as far as movement goes, if I just end the turn here, shifting over to the other player, movement is restricted by enemy units, and not by your own units. So for instance, I can't move here because, well, there's a unit there. Let's see if I can move this to a more opportune place so I can show how blocking works. So, I'm not trying to play well here. So basically, if you look at the way movement works, this Healing Mystic can move through allied units, but not through enemy units. So enemy units block movement. However, you can attack diagonally, so it's actually quite difficult to block movement. But this sort of dynamic means that you can move one unit back, play another one in front of it, and then they can't attack it. And it allows for a lot of skill testing sort of plays, which I actually quite like. It's one of the most skill testing games I've ever seen just because of the way the board state works. And it's one of the most important things about the game is just how the board state works, and it's very difficult to adjust to. Even if you have played a game like Scrolls, it doesn't quite work the same way, because in Scrolls you just had your side and your opponent's side, whereas here it's just a dynamic board. Something else that comes up is sides. So you have, if I was the Lionar player here, the player 1, then you have the friendly side of the board, you've got the middle, which is neutral, and then you have the enemy side of the board. And this actually comes up with some abilities, and I'll talk about the faction abilities when I get to the deck builder and sort of the differences between factions. It runs off the same class system as Hearthstone, so you've got neutrals and then you've got all your other things. So just before we sign off for this one, to show how combat works, so it's what you'd expect. You attack, you get attacked back, and health numbers, like in Hearthstone, are rigid, so they don't heal at the end of every turn. So if we just end out this sandbox game, again, amazing feature because it lets you set up really weird situations, which is nice. We'll get into some of the other modes here. Now, currently, there are 4 modes. You've got Ranked Ladder, which is Hearthstone. Yeah, you'll see this trend a lot. The Ranked Ladder is identical to Hearthstone's, and I mean identical. Like, it works exactly the same way. You go from, I think it's 25 is where you start. Yeah, you go from 25 to 20, and you can't lose stars, or whatever they are. They're like hexagons. And you can't lose stars, and then you go up to rank 5, and then win streaking stops. There is 2 differences. One of them is just aesthetic, which is when you get up to the 5th star, you go over to the next rank, which means it feels like you're advancing faster. But then if you go down to 0 stars in a rank, you go down, so it's actually exactly the same. The other thing that happens is if you get, I think, a lot of win streaks in a row, like if you have a long win streak, you start gaining 2 extra, not 1 extra, which means that good players can get out of lower ranks faster, which is good. And it kind of helps with the whole problem that happens in Hearthstone, which is for the first 2 weeks of the season, it's miserable for anyone that isn't like a fairly high-ranking player. And by high-ranking, I mean relative to everyone else, so 10 and above, or 10 and below, I guess. So from 10 to Legend is the good players relative to the majority of the player base, and most of the people that finish between 10 and 5 get stuck between 20 and 10 for most of the season because they can't be bothered to play enough to get out of it. But with the extra win streaking, it does help a bit there. Now, first things first, I have a complaint about this. I can't see my rank anywhere without playing a game. Now, this is a problem with a couple of things. You can't see your class level either. If you go into your profile, it has things like most played with like little fun statistics for how much you've played with their mechanic, and it's got ranked wins, win streak, things like that. And it has highest rank, and then this is for this season, so you can see your rank here. But the weird thing about this is that you'd expect it to be here, or at least put it on both. Because I mean, one of the things about Hearthstone is you go onto the deck select screen, and then you've got your rank there. You can see your rank, and you can switch between friendlies and an actual ranked. And friendlies is something I do miss, by the way. I never thought I'd say that. But it means that when you're doing quests, which I actually have a quest at the moment, if it's a faction you don't have cards for, you have to do it in either Gauntlet, which is Arena, which you can only do once every 3 days, which I'll talk about a little later, or you have to do it in Ranked. There's no friendly, which means that you really don't want to do quests sometimes, and it does cause a bit of an issue. So the rank system is both an improved version of Hearthstone, but it's too focused on it, which means that you can't see your rank, which is very irritating. You have to go navigate somewhere else, and you also can't do your quests and friendlies, which is very irritating. So a bit of a negative point there. Now it does have the starter decks and the custom decks. So you still got the tab system there, again, from Hearthstone. Now the last 2 modes are Training Grounds, which is the tutorial and all the challenges. This is the best feature in the entire game by far. This is one of the single best things I've ever seen. Now Scrolls had challenges, but there are more constraints on actual matches. These are really cool. So I've done all of these. If you just go on something, it has things like win in 1 turn. And you get given this puzzle, and you have to look at all these cards and do everything. And this is amazing for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's extra content that you can do at the beginning, and also that they can add in the future. They can offer more challenges. Second of all, it gives you gold, so you can get more cards just by sitting down and grinding challenges, and they're fun. Third thing it does is it teaches you the cards. Because with each of these challenges, you can only do them if you know what the majority of the cards on the board do. So, if you're stuck on a challenge, you can guarantee that you're going to know every single card that was in that challenge by the time you finally solve it. And it offers you a lot of insight into mechanics. Sometimes you have to replace or draw to see what's there. And it's just one of the best challenge systems I've ever seen. Now, something else that's really cool about this is that it's not just dev ones. Now, the dev challenges are the best made, and you've got ramping up difficulty, so these are easy, and then the last ones are really hard. The dev ones are much better, but there are community ones. Like this. This was the Tacticians Contest, which was submitted challenges, and they're created, as it says, for the community, by the community. And they're designed to be, they're well designed, and they're supposed to be hard. Not hard enough compared to some of the later on ones from the devs, but the point is the community supplies content that you can get gold from, which is amazing. So I love this system. This is one of the big selling points of the game because it means that your early couple of hours are a lot of fun. Now, moving on to the collection. Now, the Codex is not in the game yet, but I have no idea what that is. I haven't looked into it. So, moving on to the deck builder. Now, you may notice this looks surprisingly like Hearthstone's. Yeah, that's actually a bad thing. Not because it looks like Hearthstone's, because Hearthstone's deck builder is very good. It's fluid, you have your searching, things like that. It's really good. However, this is not Hearthstone's deck builder. This is a very bad version of Hearthstone's deck builder, and is one of the things that irritates me. Now, if you don't play Hearthstone a lot, you don't notice. But if you do play Hearthstone a lot, it's just a slap in the face. So, first of all, because it looks like Hearthstone's, I just register I need to right-click cards to zoom in, right? Yep, no, it's left-click. And then it doesn't really zoom in, it just kind of moves it. And then this message comes up, and it's just bugged out. Like, it gives you the how many copies you have, but that's already shown. It gives you the rarity, but with the large text box, it just breaks. So, I don't know. I don't like the way the deck builder is done. First of all, this should be zoomed in. I like the fact that it shows what each element of it is. But it's just tacky, which is annoying. Now, besides that, first of all, you have to use these arrows, and you can't click here and here, which is one of the things that's nice about the Hearthstone deck builder, is it's very fluid, because it feels like a book. So you just kind of sift through it like a book, and it makes it a lot easier to use. Whereas here you have to search through like this, and it's just tedious. Because it means if you're looking for a card, you can't click on this side, and you have to keep like looking at things. I keep right-clicking. I'm so used to it. And then you have to go down here, and it's just annoying. Now, something else that's irritating is you can't craft unless you go into crafting mode. I don't know who came up with this, but you can't craft unless you're in crafting mode, and you can't see your spirit, also known as arcane dust. It's the same currency system, more or less, unless you're in crafting mode. Again, annoying. It should be down here. This space isn't being used for anything. And it's just this kind of thing where Hearthstone's deck builder is very, very good. But if you're going to copy Hearthstone's deck builder, copy Hearthstone's deck builder. Don't sort of take a halfway point. Now, something else that's kind of irritating about this is that in Hearthstone, when you go into crafting mode, you've got the grey, sort of grayed out cards you can't craft. And then you've got the blue ones that you can craft. It's a very easy way of showing how much dust you have, so you can just flick through and find a card. However, if you look at this, every card I don't own is blue. And it's quite a few because I haven't been playing the game for very long. But I have 45 spirit, which means I could craft, this is me right-clicking again, I could craft this, but I can't craft this, but they're the same color. Now this threw me off a lot when I was looking through this for the first time. Now that isn't the last of it for the deck builder. Now this is very irritating. So if I'm in Lionar here, which is the most, well, it's the furthermost class, if I press back, I go to this. Now you wouldn't think that'd be too irritating. Apart from the fact that when you're trying to search for a high drop and then you keep going into Lionar, this also throws me off, and it means if I'm trying to spam through the neutrals, because the neutrals is a big section, right? So you have to spam through, and there's no mana indicator as well, so you can't select 7+ like you can in Hearthstone. So you have to actually search through the neutrals. And because I'm not used to this yet, I got it by accident there, then it's actually really annoying. Now the fastest way of doing this is actually just going onto Lionar and switching backwards. But it just feels unintuitive. And I think the deck builder is one of the worst elements of this game, to be honest. It's just the deck building and the way it works. Now at the end of the video I'm going to do a pack opening, and I'm going to show you something else which they took from Hearthstone, which irritates me, which is the little numbers that show you notifications for how many new cards you have. One of the most hated features in Hearthstone. Because you have to flick through everything to mouse over them. So the deck builder I'm not happy with. And it's one of those things where they took it from Hearthstone, but they forgot about some of the things that make it actually work properly. So you get a deck builder that isn't, well, very good. And it is quite annoying to use. It's not bad, it's just not very good. Now, if we go through the factions quickly, we've got 6 factions, which are classes from Hearthstone, basically. That's the same system. So you've got your class cards, 3 legendaries per class. Now, legendaries work like any other rarity, so you can play 3 legendaries in a deck. In a 40-card deck, you can have 3 of any card. So that's the way that works. Now, this does create a bit of an issue where it seems like in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, legendaries are just much more powerful than normal cards, and it does cause a bit of an issue. However, and I want to stress this, it's not noticeable unless you're in very high ranks, which the vast majority of players are not. It's only noticeable in very high ranks because the game is so skill-based that unless you are very, very fast at learning, you're not going to be getting it to the point where people have tons of legendaries. It just won't happen. And the game is incredibly skill-based. I mean, I've got to... I was being tutored by Senelion, who jumped on the game about 2 months ago. And I've been absorbing information from him since I'm so used to playing card games competitively, so I kind of learnt the game quite quickly. And I can now keep up and actually have about 70% win rate or 60% win rate at rank 3. And I'm playing against people with like full decks of legendaries and full meta decks, and I just have my budget deck, and it's working. Why? Because if you're playing better, you will win. That's basically how that works. Now, if 2 equal players are playing, the guy with the legendaries will generally win, but that doesn't really... It doesn't happen until you get to about rank 4. And the vast majority of people will probably be playing between 5 and 15 or something around there. So it doesn't... it's a negative point, but it's not an incredibly negative point. Also, you can get legendaries fairly fast. You get legendaries through achievements, like finishing a certain amount of quests and things like that. And they have the hidden achievements like they do in Hearthstone. And you can get a legendary from them. And at the end of every season, depending on how well you did, you get one copy of each of the new cards that get released every month. There's 4 new cards every month, one for each rarity: common, rare, epic, I think, and then legendary. Let me find the rarity on this. I think purple is epic. Right click again. Yeah. So yeah, purple is epic, and then you got legendary. So depending on how well you do, you get a copy for each one for each rarity. So if you're in top 5 ranks, you get a free legendary every month, which is really, really nice. On top of that, the card acquisition rate is 1 in 5 packs as a legendary, as opposed to in Hearthstone where it's 1 in 20. So it's quite a big card acquisition boost there. Now on the flip side, you need 3 legendaries of a type in a deck, which kind of balances it out a bit. But then legendaries cost less. They only cost 900, not 1600. So in the end, it is a faster card acquisition rate. So yeah, you need to do some maths on that, but it is a faster card acquisition rate than Hearthstone. It's about double. It's not quadruple, which is what the drop rate would suggest, because you need more legendaries. It is about double, which is still very, very good. It's not like Spellweavers, but Spellweaver is like criminally fast in some cases. So if we go over each of the factions theme-wise, we've got Lionar, which are very general focused and have a lot of provoke, which is taunt. So the way provoke works is interesting. So you play a provoke minion, and then it has a provoke area, which is its attack range, basically. So every single nearby square, which is 3, 6, yeah, it's 8 squares around it, and anything in that 8 squares cannot move or attack anything else apart from the provoke minion. Now, if there's multiple provoke minions, it can attack any of them, but it still can't move. No movement allowed. Now, I really like the way provoke works. It's not just a Lionar thing, it's just they have more provokes than any other faction. And it's something which is really, really cool, because it's saying, well, taunt is kind of useful, but then they just move out of the way. So what do? You turn taunt into provoke, and then they can't move either. It's sort of adding to that board play aspect and makes positioning matter. So Lionar's focus is, as I said, on the general and on provoke, and this kind of comes in with their mechanic, their class mechanic, Zeal. Now, Zeal, which was also in the other card, is if it's nearby a general, your general specifically, it gets a bonus. So the idea is that Lionar has this playstyle where you kind of move your general around with the army around him and just mow through things. And it's my favorite faction. It's the faction I decided to jump on, since it's very, very good as a budget deck, since a lot of your important cards are basics. Now, the card system works the same way as base set Hearthstone, which is you have your basics, which you start with and get through leveling your classes, which is another idea they stole from Hearthstone, which is a bad idea. So some of you may have forgotten about this if you've been playing Hearthstone for a while, because you do it in about 2 hours and you're done. But when you start up a new Hearthstone account, you have to level your heroes to get any of the useful basic cards. And it is one of the most tedious things you can possibly do. On top of that, from what I can tell, there's no way of leveling it outside of ranked matches. You can't use bots to level against. You cannot use bots to level against. You can't just blow through bots over and over and over again, grinding XP to level 10. So you have to take it onto ranked and do it, and that is tedious. It is really tedious, especially considering you can't tell which heroes you have that are level. You can't tell their level. You can't tell which one's 10, so you have to remember all these things. And in some cases, you have some really key cards that you just can't do without, like Tempest, which is one of the most important Lionar cards because it's an AoE spell. And it's the same goes for some of the other classes, as you have some of their best basic cards you get at level 10, which means the leveling process is miserable. It's a small thing that you get over in about 2 hours, but why even take it from Hearthstone in the first place? It's one of those things that most people really dislike from Hearthstone. And as I said, Hearthstone's an amazing game, but you don't want to take the bad ideas from Hearthstone as well. Hearthstone's not perfect either. Just because it's popular does not mean that it's a perfectly designed game. and some of their stuff just should not be copied, and this is one of them, is the leveling system. Because the leveling system in Hearthstone is really painful, and this is the reason, is that you only get certain cards as you level. So, outside of the leveling thing, the actual card rarity system works. You get your basics that you get for free in both classes and neutrals, and then you have your commons, your rares, things like that. That's fine. And the fact that they have a lot of basics means that even new players can build decent decks, and there's a lot of powerful basics. Now, in some cases, as I said, power level seems to be dictated by the amount of dust you need to put into it, but that's not entirely true. There's a couple outliers, like Holy Immolation, if we're sticking in Lionar here, which is very, very powerful, and that's an epic. And then you've got some legendaries which are also incredibly powerful, like Silence Third Wish, if we're going over to Retruvian. However, there's also a lot of basics that are very powerful. In fact, if we go back to Lionar, a lot of their most powerful cards that are played at a highly competitive level are basics. Like, we've got Windblade Adept, Knight, Divine Bond, Martyrdom. These are all basics, and they're all played extensively. So, as a result, you start with a lot of your more powerful cards. So, on one side of things, it feels like you need a lot of cards. On the other side of things, basics are very good. In fact, what it reminds me of, funny that, is base set Hearthstone. So some of you that picked up Hearthstone in the last year or so and played more in the, well, adventure times when they have adventures coming out and you just one-off payment, you get a whole bunch of cards, will not know about how base set worked, because base set Hearthstone was very, very different. So in base set Hearthstone you had a combination of basic cards, like Hex and things like that, that were very, very powerful. And on the other side of things, you had some uber-powered legendaries that you kind of need to deal with, like Ragnaros and Ysera, that just dominated things. And that's how it was for quite a while, up until probably BRM, up until the second adventure came out. It was very, very focused on the basics and the high-cost cards. And it balances out, and the fact that the card acquisition rate is about twice as fast means that, as opposed to in Hearthstone, where it was really, really painful, it's not that painful here at all. In fact, you get over it in a couple of weeks, you start getting cards, and because the card acquisition rate is fast, you have a lot more of the, oh, I just got a legendary, and you get to try it out, and it's fun. So, I actually both like and dislike it. But if you're not a highly competitive player, if you're just looking for a game to play for fun, it doesn't even affect you, because you start just opening new things, and as you improve and have fun with the game, you'll start doing better anyway. So if you're just looking for a card game to play for fun, the drawback doesn't exist. It's just a very, very fun system. Which is good, because that means you attract a larger player base. And as one of the things that Duelyst has done very, very well, is that they've got this sort of thing that Hearthstone achieved, but they've actually done it a bit better, which is the whole basic system to encourage new players to play, but then the legendaries and such are only super powerful if piloted by highly competitive players, which means that for the majority of the player base, it honestly doesn't matter. And it's this thing which is a weird dynamic, and so it means that I'm a bit tainted on this, because I play a lot of Duelyst at a more competitive level than average now, since I've just rocketed up the ranks. But most people won't do that, so it's kind of hard to rate it as a negative point, is what I'm trying to get at. So, moving on from the card acquisition, so I said we've got Lionar with the Zeal and Provoke and things like that, and that's their focused, and healing, since they use the general a lot. Then we got Songhai, which is, for lack of a better term, rogue. It's similar playstyle. It's not exactly the same, obviously. It's similar playstyle, very, very burst heavy, combo centric. Their main mechanic is backstab. Now, backstab is an interesting one because it's position based, which is really cool. Where if you attack from behind the enemy general, because both boards face each other, and no matter where you are on the board, you're still facing the same direction. So if you hit them from exactly behind them, the one space behind them, you deal extra damage and you don't get counterattacked. And the reason I love this is because it adds burst mechanics, yeah, but it's interactive burst, which is weird because your opponent can counterplay it by simply, well, putting something behind their general, or by just sticking to the wall that they started on. Then you can't be backstabbed at all. So I really enjoy that mechanic, and it plays into the board state, and it means that you can play around a burst, which is something I've never seen before. In no other card game can you play around a burst efficiently. Like in Hearthstone you have taunt, kind of. And then you have healing, kind of, but they can still burst you from hand. And then same in Spellweaver and in Magic and things like that, they still have burst combos from hand that you can't really deal with. I guess in Magic you have counter spells, but that's about it. Whereas here you have on-board burst that you can see coming, or requires a lot of cards to actually get it to work, and you can stop it by playing smart, which is an amazing way of doing it, and I really like that. So besides that, they have a lot of interactions with spells, and most of their stuff is damage based with a couple exceptions. They also have a slight focus on ranged, which means that you can attack anywhere on the field and you don't get counterattacked unless it's by another ranged creature. So that's how Songhai works. Now onto Vitruvian. So Vitruvian is, well, quite hated in the community, but is quite an interesting one. I'm not really sure what to compare it to. It has two main focuses. The first focus is on dervishes. Now, dervishes are 2/2s that get summoned, and then they disappear at the end of turn. So they have obelisks that summon them at the start of every turn in their structure, so they can't move. They have all these buffs, like Scion's First Wish, that they can buff it just straight up and it can attack. They've got things like Dunecaster, so it doesn't disappear at the end of turn. So they have this summoning focus thing, where it's a lot of tokens. And that's really cool. Now, the other mechanic they seem to be focused around a lot is Blast. So they're focused around Blast a lot. They have a lot of Blast mechanics. So what Blast is it's like ranged, but you can only attack in a line. So you can attack straight ahead of you, or you can, well, in a column or a row, basically. And that's how that works, attack everything in that line. It's a very powerful mechanic, so most Blast creatures have quite low stats. Now, they've got a couple of blasts, so they've got their Blast 2 drop, they have the 5 drop with Blast, and then they also have an equipment that they give their general to give him Blast. Now, while I'm on the topic of equipment, I might as well talk about it. So, basically, what artifacts are is you play them, they equip onto your hero, and they have 3 durability. Whenever your general takes damage, they lose the durability, and when they go to 0, they get destroyed. So they're basically weapons, but instead of losing durability whenever you attack, they lose durability whenever you're attacked. So if it's a melee, you're attacked back, and they start losing durability, which makes some artifacts very powerful because they can avoid losing durability. And Wildfire Ankh is one of them because you have Blast, so you're ranged basically. So they have quite a focus on those two mechanics, and some of the other really cool cards like Time Maelstrom, where you take an extra turn, but it takes 9 mana, and you can only go up to 9 mana total. You can't go up to 10, so it takes your whole turn, but then you get an extra turn, you can do some really cool things with it. Now onto Abyssian, which is a bit like Warlock, but also a little bit like Black and Magic, where you've got removal, you sacrifice your own stuff to kill his stuff, you get advantage from tokens, things like that. And it's a really cool playstyle. Now it also has a element of aggro, and is a bit of a weak faction right now, but the design is pretty cool. It's a lot more focused around something called Deathwatch, where a lot of the cards have Deathwatch, and I don't know if it's their mechanic. I can't remember if there's any neutral cards with Deathwatch, but it is very Abyssian focused. So Deathwatch is whenever anything else on the board dies apart from Shadow Dancer, so like Cult Master basically, or like Flesh Sculptor from Spellweaver. But if the difference is whenever something Deathwatch dies in an AoE with everything else, it works more like it does in Hearthstone, where it doesn't gain the effect. So they're very focused around tokens, and, well, their tokens dying. Now, the interesting thing about Deathwatch is it works on your opponent's stuff as well. So they're very encouraged to trade their tokens for their opponent's stuff so they get advantage out of their Deathwatch, and it's a really cool mechanic. Now onto Magmar, which is a mix of big beefy creatures and punishing small creatures. Difficult to explain, but I'll kind of show how this works. So they have certain things like Druid. They've got basically Innervate, but it has a drawback, so the creature takes 2 damage. But they have Ramp in Kujata, things like that, so it takes damage, but then deals damage to the creatures. They have Ramp at a cost, and they can ramp into really big creatures on this side of things. They've got the biggest creatures in the game, so that's how they get rewarded for their ramp. But then they also have removal, but most of their removal punishes small creatures, so their AoE is Plasma Storm, so it destroys all minions with 3 or less attacks. So the idea is you punish small creatures and promote big creatures, and it's a really cool playstyle. And they've got things like Natural Selection. You can only destroy it if it has the lowest attack, and it's a really cool flavor side of things where, like, how do you give a green or druid style deck, if we're looking at inspiration, removal? Well, you do things like punish small creatures because they're smaller than yours, or you do things like it can't attack back because, well, honorable combat is basically what they're doing. And it's a really cool design and is a mix between basically green from Magic and Druid in Hearthstone. Now, the last faction is Vanar. Now, Vanar is weird. So, they have a frost theme to them, and their mechanic is, and I forgot to talk about the Magmar mechanic actually, the Magmar mechanic is, just backtracking here for a bit, is Rebirth. Now, Rebirth is when it dies, it becomes an egg, and then if it lives until the end of your next turn, it summons itself again. So generally, Rebirth creatures have adequate stats for their cost, but then don't have any other abilities. Now there's one exception, which is a certain legendary that most people really hate, which is the Silithar Eldar. Bigger stats than average for its cost, although the way stats work for the cost is different from it does in Hearthstone, so this may look insane, but there's a vanilla creature for 6 that is an 8/8. So arguably it has less stats for its cost, and then it has Rebirth and also makes eggs that are basically Rebirth eggs. So anyway, moving on to Vanar. So Vanar, as I said, is a frost theme, and their mechanic is Infiltrate. So Infiltrate operates when it's on the opponent's side of the board, which I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the sandbox game. So if it's in your opponent's side of the board, it gets its Infiltrate. So in this case, it goes back to your hand whenever it dies, or the action bar as they call it. Now the basic one for this that's in the starter deck, and it's actually a good creature, is the Crystal Cloaker, which becomes a 4/3 if it's on your opponent's side of the board. And it's really cool because you get to play around it as your opponent, and also benefits positioning, which adds more to the skill of the game and rewards you for playing well, which is really nice. Now, the rest of Vanar is a weird one because Vanar doesn't have burst damage from board. Most classes have a lot of burst damage, but it's burst damage you can play around, which is both good and bad because it means that there's a ridiculous amount of burst damage in the game, but it also means you can play around the burst damage, so I can't really tell if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's weird. It's like from Hearthstone in the burst meta of Miracle Rogue and Druid and things like that, but on the flip side of things, you can play around it, so is it a good thing, bad thing? I think it's up to the player, to be honest. I'm more leaning on the side of it's bad from a new player perspective, but good from a experienced player perspective. But I think it's generally well done because it offers ways of ending the game, but if you play around it, it's good. Now, this does mean that healing is heavily promoted, and this is one of the problems with Vanar, is they don't have a lot of healing. So they do have a habit of dying to burst combos and need to play a lot of neutral healing cards. Since all of their stuff is very, very creature focused, they have things that buff creatures, they've got ways of reactivating creatures so they can attack twice. They have basically Knife Juggler, but it can only hit minions, so it can't deal face damage. Everything's very, very minion focused, and is an interesting way of playing, and I actually quite like it. So they have, well, just to kind of show their style, Mark of Solitude, a creature becomes a 5/5, which sounds insane because you could put it on something ranged, but it can't attack the general, which means that it can help you win the game, but it can't actually win the game, which is really, really cool. I like this design. It makes a card that looks broken but can't actually do damage to the enemy hero, which is really awesome. Now, if we look at some of the neutrals, we just got, well, standard stuff with effects, and there's a lot of neutral cards, like a lot of neutral cards. As I said, it's basically like in Hearthstone, where the neutral cards are very interesting in terms of effects, but can be used anywhere, which means that some neutral cards are only played in some classes, but they're not restricted to those classes, right? So it's a good system. I actually quite like the neutral card system, and it allows you to give each class its identity, but you can pad out the game with a lot of very, very universal minions that can see play in multiple classes. It's basically, instead of having multicolor cards in games that are based more on Magic, where you have your 5 colors, you instead have class cards that give them their identity, and neutral cards that are basically multicolor cards that can be played in whatever faction you want. Okay, so before we get into an actual game, and well, play a game, so that we can show how it works in an actual game, we'll do a bit of a pack opening, so I can show how this works. Take a drink since I've been talking non-stop for 40 minutes. So this pack system is quite well done. They're called Spirit Orbs, and it shows how many are being shown, and you get your 10 over here. Now if we open one, first things first. Ooh, legendary. So that pack opening looks a bit like Hearthstone's. Now the only problem I have with the pack opening screen is that in Hearthstone, one, you get to open them one by one, which is a really, really cool thing, and they do that in Spellweaver as well, and it gives you a bit of suspense when you're looking at things. And if they could do it in Spellweaver where they have the glow in the background, that'd be really good, because it makes pack opening a lot more exciting when you have that effect. Now, the other problem I have with this is that, well, I've got Legendary and Epic to show the pack opening again, is that if you look at the top, the cards start out of view and then come into view. I think what I would prefer is if it exploded over here and then just showed the cards as they are now. Simply because, I don't know, it feels a little bit tacky. It's not that tacky, but it feels a little bit out of place, and I think could be altered a bit. Although, honestly, it's just a nitpick. It's a very, very small thing, but I think it could be polished up a bit. Now, this game is not finished. It's still in beta. They're finishing things out and they're improving it constantly, releasing patches very, very frequently. But yeah, as you can tell, there's still some stuff they need to go ahead and fix, which is expected. As I said, no game is perfect. Now, what really sells this game is actually the in-game play of the board state and how the board state interacts. There's a lot of negative things with the deck builder and aesthetics. However, when it comes to the actual board state and how the game works in-game, which is the important bit, it is one of the best designed gameplay styles I've ever seen, and really does sell the game, and it makes it incredibly addicting. So now if you notice the number of orbs, because there's only 6 left, it starts shrinking. As I pull them over, it updates, which is really cool. Now if you notice, I'm getting a lot of epics. Like, it's not uncommon to see 2 epics in one pack sometimes. Oh, another legendary. Now the way the monetization works in this, I'll show it after this. So I opened 15 Spirit Orbs, another legendary. Yeah, you get legendaries very fast. It's 1 in every 5 packs on average. And you get a ton of epics. You get probably 1 epic every 2 packs or 3 packs on average. It's a very high acquisition rate as far as that's concerned. See, we get anything in the last pack? Any legendaries or epics? Nah, none in the last pack. But yeah, I did get a lot in some of the others. Now, if we go to the armory, which is where you buy things, so you can buy a single Spirit Orb for 100 gold. It's the same as it is in Hearthstone. Now, as far as monetization goes, I don't know if this is the same monetization as is in Hearthstone. I think it is, because I recognize the 40 for 50. I recognize that. Now, it's in dollars by default, and it converts solely from dollars. You don't get any stupid international, like, markups like happens in Hearthstone. This is actually done properly. I hate Blizzard for that, is the fact that, so for people that don't know this, so if you have only been on one region in Hearthstone, you don't have multiple region accounts. In Hearthstone, if you take the price from one region and you convert it just on currency into another region, and you check that against that region's price for packs, they are not the same. So they've had, and they've altered it over time, but there was times when I think a pack in EU cost like 20% more or something, and you had one in Asia which cost like 30% more for a time, and they fixed it, kind of, but because it's not direct conversion, every time they fix it, it stays that way. It doesn't use a currency converter. So if the currency strengths change, you end up with this really, really dumb system where packs in one region cost more than they do in others. It's really, really stupid. And what they do here is that they show it in dollars, and then when you go to actually pay for it, it just does the currency conversion straight up as it should do. So 15 spirit orbs, which I just opened there, is $20, which is about £14 in the UK, and is about 17 euros, I think. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, so it does the currency conversion, which means no matter where you are, you're paying the same amount for packs, which is not something I should be happy about, but I kind of am. So you spend the same amount no matter where you are on spirit orbs. Alright, now before we go into a game, I want to show this. So you see this number here, this 58. Oh boy. Of all the things to take from Hearthstone, guys, come on. I mentioned this earlier. So, what is the most hated thing from Hearthstone out of the deck builder? Probably the fact that every time you open a pack, you have to go through your entire collection, mousing over everything to get rid of the stupid notifications. Now, I'm just going to make everyone's life easier with just one trick. This works on Hearthstone as well. You type new in the search, and then you mouse over everything. But why do I have to do this? Can't I just turn it off in the options or something? Because this is like, it sounds cool, but it even shows it when you have more than 3 copies. So that is incredibly frustrating that you have to do that after every pack. Now, because I opened 15, yeah, I get to go look through all the cards I got. But if you open one pack and you get 3 new cards, you have to go... In fact, no, it always shows 5, I think, because even if you go above 3, it still shows it. So after every single pack, you have to do that, and it's just frustrating. And it's something they have in Hearthstone as well, and it's just irritating. Now, it does have the mass disenchant thing, which is very, very nice. Now, because this account's quite new, even though I opened all of those different cards, not many were extras. So anyway, that's the deck builder. I think the deck builder is the worst thing about the game. It is possible. Like, the deck builder isn't bad. Like, it's not. It's above average. The only problem I have with it is it's based off Hearthstone's, and Hearthstone's is close to perfect. It's not. It has that stupid notification thing, but it's close to perfect. And they just took Hearthstone's system, and it's a little bit worse done than Hearthstone's, and I think it does mark it down a bit. So if we go into a game... with my budget Lionar deck. Now it says average waiting time it says average waiting time 1 minute 20 seconds, but it's actually like 2 half the time. Now there is a problem with the way matchmaking works, where you can play against the same person twice, which is incredibly irritating. Now I'm going first. It shows divisions and achievements. I'm in Diamond Division, which means I'm in the top 5 ranks. Keep the 1/2 drop, and we'll send away the other 2. So we'll just play through one game, and then we'll close out this particular video. So first things first, at the beginning of every turn, you want to send something to be replaced. I picked up a Martyrdom, and then I've got the Ironcliff Guardian. So what we're going to do is move forward 2 spaces, and play the Windblade Adept here, so that I can take a Globe next turn if I need to. Now, this thing has the Zeal ability of gain +2 attack, so it's essentially a 2-mana 4/3. Now, stats-wise, per cost, on average it's 5 plus an ability 2 mana, 6 plus an ability at 3, at 4 it's I think 8 plus an ability or 9 plus an ability, I can't remember. So we've got Sunbloom, which is mass silence basically, but I think this turn I want to Martyrdom this guy to destroy him. He can't gain any life because he's at full, and I want to Primus Fist. So I think what I'm going to do is send Sunbloom away, play the Primus Fist here. It gives +1 attack to here and triggers the Mana Globe, so I get an extra mana, and then I can Martyrdom. Then we can go ahead and move on forward and make sure I move my General next to my Zeal guy so he doesn't lose his attack, and attack for 5. Now this guy does take 2 damage, which means he could attack it again, but then he loses another 5 life. Now healing is a big deal in this game because of how much damage happens and how fast it happens. So healing is actually important because, well, if you have an entire game about board control, going after the general is a loss in board control, but over time you win. Okay, because they all take 2 damage, you lose board control. So if you have healing, you can actually punish your opponent for losing board control. As we have our first legendary showing up, the Tusk Boar. Tusk Boar is an interesting card. It's a 3/3 with Rush and for 2 mana, which is really good. And at the beginning of the turn, it returns back to hand. So in theory, you could just use it over and over and over again. In practice, not so much. So what we're going to do first is send away, I think, the Tempest? Let's hold on to some healing, actually, and we'll hold on to Tempest, we might need it. Let's send away the Adept. And we're going to go trigger this globe and drop the Ironcliff Guardian. Quite literally, it has airdrop. Now, airdrop means I can put it anywhere. So what I'm going to do is put it straight in front of his face. So this has provoke, meaning that it blocks both of these from moving and also attacking anything else. And the Mogwai, if I say that correctly, has whenever it moves, it draws. But the problem is, if you can't move, you can't draw off it. Ah yes, the Silhouette Tracer. Now the Silhouette Tracer is a cool card. It allows your general to teleport, which is really, really good if you're looking at Songhai, which needs to get around a lot and deal a lot of combo bursting. Now, that was a perfect example of how Songhai works, basically. He used 2 different teleport spells to get out of range of my provoke guy, which is a really, really cool way of doing that. Now, I've got 5 mana, and I think maybe we want Pandora this game. I think we'll send away... I think this turn I want to go Tempest Healing Mystic. So what we'll do is we'll send away the Suntide Maiden. And I'm going to Tempest, wiping at the board basically. Use my provoke guy. I'm going to move a bit closer to his general. And then I'm going to move down, attack here, and play the Healing Mystic behind my general so that he can't backstab it. Using positioning to my advantage. Now, Pandora is a card I actually got through finishing quests, which is really cool. I finished a certain amount of quests, I don't know what the amount was, and I got a free legendary for it, which is really, really cool. Now, Pandora, at least the card itself, is a 3/10, and at the end of every turn, it summons a 3/3 in a random nearby space. Now, it does have a random ability as well, which is really, really crazy. There is a bit of RNG in the game. There's not a lot, like you don't notice it affecting games ever, really. So I like the fact that there is RNG because it adds a lot of fun to the game, but it's not really obnoxious like it is in Hearthstone. So it's a good blend. Now I get rewarded for playing around Backstab as he plays the Mask of Shadows, which has Backstab 4, so he basically hits for 8 if he's attacking from behind. Now we could kill this with Dancing Blades, or we could just martyrdom it. This is an interesting one. So I want to kill this artifact over time, because every time he takes damage, it loses charges. So I think what I'm going to do here is I can martyrdom with Sunriser, maybe deal 2 damage. Unfortunately, I have to go into backstab range if I want to play the Dancing Blades. So I think we'll get rid of the Dancing Blades. That deals damage in front of it. Okay, so we've got the provoke guy now. So what I'm going to do is move my provoke into range. And we're just going to... So if I were to attack, then this thing's backstab would affect it. So I can't really do that. Now what I could do here is play Sunriser and just deal some damage. This is an interesting play. I think what I'm going to do here is just martyrdom. He gets to heal a bit, which is frustrating. And then I'm going to play my next provoke guy down there. He can't backstab it because he can't move. And he's behind it, but he's not directly behind it. And then move my general out of the way. So this is interesting with the way backstab works, where he's behind it on screen, but to be properly behind it to get the effect, he needs to be directly behind it on these squares, or just this square. So it's how you play him with board state. Now what I'm going to try and do is move over to this direction so that his backstab doesn't work anymore. Because the further I am on this side, the less area he can be in to get his backstab. Lantern Fox. Now, Lantern Fox is an interesting card because it has a copy of itself and it has celerity. Now, celerity means it can activate twice a turn, so you can attack twice, move twice, etc. Now, I don't think I'm going to want Pandora now. So, what I'm going to do here is we can use Sunriser. Wherever anything is healed, it deals 2 damage around it, and we can AoE this area and also whittle away at his artifact. So what we're going to do here is move the taunt and my general up so that we can play Sunriser and we can heal up. So I'm going to heal up my big guardian up to full, because if I were to heal myself, I'd overheal and it wouldn't do much. And we're going to move the big guardian down here so it doesn't get backstabbed. And we're going to play another healing card here on my general. So now this dealt 4 damage around it, and you notice that the Mask of Shadows is starting to weaken because of its durability loss, and now it's gone. That's how artifacts work. It's a really, really cool system. It means that artifacts can be super powerful, but you can destroy them, and it also works like weapons in Hearthstone, where there's particular cards that destroy them. Like, there's the equivalent of the Acidic Swamp Ooze in this game. Now, we look to be in quite a good position here. He's surrounded by taunts, he doesn't have any board state. I'm at 24. Now, I am open to backstab, kind of, but this spot here directly is double provoked, so he can't really backstab me. It's a very, very good board state for me. Now, this little 1/1 has ranged, so he could attack me directly. He could put a card on it that is the sort of Death Touch ability, and he could destroy one of my taunts. There's lots of things he could do. But yeah, this is actually a good game to showcase because it kind of shows how important the board state is and how important positioning is. Things like the play I made earlier with Sunriser could only be done because of positioning. And it's a really cool mechanic. Oh, he super buffed that up, and it looks like he's going to take out both provoke. But he's low on cards and mana, and he's not moving, so I think he might be dead here. And he is, so we can do something kind of funny here. Oh, I was going to martyrdom my own guy so that this would trigger. So yeah, martyrdom would heal me, and then the Sunriser would kill him. So that's an example of a game. Now, when you have victory, it shows your level, and you can add your previous opponent. You can report him. Don't see why I would. It shows how close you are to your next reward. Now, the way rewards work is every 2 wins, not 3, like it is in Hearthstone, every 2 wins you get 5 gold, and if it's the first 10, I think, first 10 rewards, you get an extra 10. So it has a gold cap, kind of, to avoid botting, but on the flip side of things, you can still gain rewards. It's not very efficient past a certain point. However, that certain point is 20 wins in a day, which means that you will probably not hit it if you're the average player. And only the most hardcore players, or streamers basically, will actually hit it. So I really like the way they've taken this system from Hearthstone and they've improved it. This is something which is weird with Duelyst. They've taken half of the things they take from Hearthstone are improved, and the other half are made worse. It's a weird blend. I think that overall it balances out, but what really puts this over the top in terms of how good the game is the board. The board state is one of the best mechanics I've ever seen in any card game, because it allows you to be really, really skilled if you want to be. If you want to get good at the game, you can just outplay your opponent, but it also allows you to do some really ridiculous combos, and it adds a really fun element to the game, and I love that system. Now, the last thing on here is tipping. This is quite funny. So basically, if you play a good game and you play against someone and you just want to say thanks for the game, you can tip, and people do. If you win, you can tip your opponent and just say, alright, I gained 15 gold for this match. Here's 5. I think you deserve it for having for playing such a good game against me, and people actually do tip, and it's a really, really cool system. It adds a bit of sort of community aspect to it. Now, this is the division screen. Now, I would like to be able to see this on the deck select. In fact, you can't see these stars, or whatever these are, I guess hexagons, at any point. You can only see your current rank on your profile. You can't see the exact rank, which is quite frustrating, and it will probably be improved in the future. As I said, the game is still being developed. Now, it shows your division. I'm currently in Diamond. It goes Bronze, which is when you can't rank down. Again, I can't remember exactly how it works. I think it's from... I don't quote me on this. I think it's from 25 to 20. It could be from 20 to 15. I can't remember. But Gold happens at 10, and then you have Diamond at 5, and that's when you can't win streak, and then S rank at 0, which is basically just Legend. Now, currently, there's no rankings in S rank. You just kind of stay there. But in the future, they'll probably add that in like it is in Hearthstone. And as I said earlier, the ranking system, not the most loved thing from Hearthstone, but you get ranked rewards just like in current Hearthstone, which is good. And also, you win streak more in lower ranks if you're doing really, really well, which means that it's less of a grind every single season, which is quite nice. So, again, it's sort of an idea from Hearthstone that's improved in some ways and made worse in others. It's a weird dynamic. Not that taking stuff from Hearthstone is a bad thing, because that game is very, very good. Now, because it's a beta, obviously, you've got bug reports at the top. Now, see if I can... Is there anything else I want to talk about here? Oh, yeah. So, if we look at the quest system, now you get 2 quests every single day at the top. Now, quest rollover happens in 7 hours, and you get 2 quests, and if there's a quest there that you haven't done, tough. It gets replaced immediately. So you only have 2 quest slots, and it encourages you to log in every day. Now, you also have first win of the day, which gives you, I think, 25 gold immediately. So you essentially get 3 quests a day, which is a very fast gold acquisition rate. Again, the gold acquisition, well, the card acquisition is about twice as fast, but the gold acquisition is really quick, and is one of the plus sides of the game. And it also encourages you to branch out a bit. Now, you can replace each one of these quests. You get 2 replaces, 1 for each quest, and I quite like the quest system, and I think it's a good improvement over Hearthstone's. Profile-wise, again, it shows your current rank, and then it shows Gauntlet Run, top wins, which is Arena, and I suck at it. Then you've got Ranked Wins with your top streak, and Gauntlet Wins, which I'm not sure what this is. Yeah, I'm not sure what this is. So anyway, I'm guessing it's once you've done a certain amount, it shows up how many times you've won in Gauntlet, and it has most played, your 3 most played factions, and how many of that mechanic, of that sort of factions mechanic you've played. So I've played 540 Zealous units with Zeal, I've played 28 Assassins, and 0 Rebirth. Yeah, I've mostly been playing Lionar. Now, as for the rest of the stuff, as I said, we've got the Armory, and then we've got Settings. Now, settings are quite basic. We've got Bloom, and then we've got... quality, so you can turn this down if your computer is not as good, audio, and in-game you've got the battle log, which you can see on the side and bring. It's a bit like Hearthstone's. It's not quite as detailed as Hearthstone's, but I imagine it's going to be improved in the future. Player details, sticky targeting, which means when you move, it keeps it selected so you can attack, log out, and quit. So you got all the settings there, and then you got the friends list. You can add your previous friend, you can see all your friends' ranks, and you can chat to people, and yeah, it's good. You got a challenge system. In fact, I think that, I'm not sure if this is better or worse than Hearthstone's, because if you were in game, it would have the game in the background and bring it up. Again, like it's kind of like in Hearthstone's, but this one's more different than normal, where on the bad side of things, you can't chat in-game as easily because it blurs out stuff in the background. On the flip side of things, it means you can spend... It's easier to read the conversations. So, is that worse or better? It's personal preference. I think it's a good friends list. It's personal preference whether or not that's better or worse than Hearthstone's, and I think it's different enough that it deserves not to be compared in that regard. Now, last thing I want to talk about is Gauntlet, which I can't play at the moment, because Gauntlet is, well, I don't have to describe it. I might do a Gauntlet run video in the future just to kind of show how it works. But Gauntlet is Arena, basically. Only you pick 40 cards because it's a 40 card deck. It is Arena through and through. Just like in Spellweaver, they basically just took Arena because Arena's a very, very good system. You pick a faction from three. You pick one out of three cards over and over and over again, and you get occasionally legendaries and epics with a slightly higher rate than Hearthstone, and you just go through it. Now, unfortunately, you can only play Gauntlet every 3 days. Every 3 days is the Gauntlet day, and on that day, you can play as many Gauntlets as you want. Why they did this is a weird thing. I was talking to Senelion about this, who has been playing the game for a lot longer than I have, and from what I can understand, the reason for it is twofold. First of all, it gives a lot of publicity to Gauntlet, so when it's a Gauntlet day, everyone plays it, which means the queue times are basically non-existent in Gauntlet. However, the other reason for this is apparently that the rewards for doing well in Gauntlet are very, very high. Now, from what I can tell, breaking even is 3 wins. I think. It's roughly 3. I know that if you get 1 win, yes, I've done this, you get a pack and 20 gold, and it's 150 entries, so that's not even. If you get 4 wins, you can get like 40 gold, plus a pack, plus 40 spirit. And a card, like a rare. So that's a really, really good reward, because that's basically 250 gold worth, pretty much. Or it's close to 250 gold worth of stuff. But at 7 wins, you get 150 gold guaranteed. Then you get a pack, a card, and you also get a ticket. Now, a ticket is just a free Gauntlet run. So at 7 wins, you basically get 2 Gauntlet runs for free. So I think what they've done here is they've made a Gauntlet that is highly, highly rewarding and is a big community event, but you can only play it once every 3 days, which means that it's very, very good for people that want to play both arena formats and ladder, but not so much for people that only want to play arena formats. And I think you're missing not a large part of the player base, because the majority of people play both. Even a lot of competitive players don't only play ladder, they play Gauntlet as well, and a lot of casual players still like playing both. It does mean that you're not appealing to, it's a small amount of player base, probably about 5 to 10%, that just want to play Gauntlet, and they can't do that. So that is a bit of a negative point. But on the flip side of things, it's something which, it means you have something to look forward to. It is twice a week, basically, because it's every 3 days, you get to play Gauntlet, and that's really fun. So, yeah, it's difficult to rate. I think it's both a good and a bad thing that they've done it that way. It's hard to rate, and I'm just not going to try it. Now, in the future, I will do a Gauntlet video just to show that off, and then we'll go from there. But anyway, final conclusion to this hour and 10-minute long video. It reminds me of the first impression I did for Spellweaver, actually. That was an hour long as well. So, conclusion about Duelyst. Now, the aesthetic of the game, the art style, and the interface is good. It's not Hearthstone, but nothing is. Nothing is as good looking as Hearthstone. Don't even try and compare them. Nothing is as good looking as Hearthstone. It is good, though. Like, you can see in the background, you got little doves flying around. Oh, whatever birds there are. They look like doves. But anyway. So, it looks good, and that's fine. It doesn't have to look like Hearthstone. That involved Blizzard putting a ton of money into it. It looks good, and it's not obtrusive. Now, the deck builder is above average. It unfortunately gets compared to Hearthstone because it looks exactly the same. It's just worse. But it is still above average for a card game, so that's good. The play options are the high point of the game. All 4 are amazing. You have Gauntlet, which is Arena, which is very, very good, and the every 3 days thing is either a plus side or negative side. It's a negative side if you just want to play it, but it's a plus side if you only want to play it sometimes because you get more rewards as a result. You have the challenges, which is really good and a really good way of earning gold. That's really cool. You've got the rank system, which is Hearthstone's, but better done. And then you've got Sandbox, which allows you to test things whenever you want to. That's, again, really good. And it allows you to test matchups just on your own if you want to. That's a really good system, and I really like it. So the play modes are by far the biggest seller, and the board state and the way the game actually works. The gameplay is some of the best I have ever seen in a card game. In fact, I think it is the best gameplay I've ever seen in a card game. It melds a board state with card play and offers something to everyone that plays it, which is a really cool system. It's also a lot more fast-paced than Scrolls was, which was a bit slow-paced, and that kind of turned a lot of people off. Whereas in Duelyst, depending on the deck you're playing, you can have fast games or slow games, and it's really, really good that they've done it that way. So the play modes and the in-game is not perfect, because nothing's perfect, but it's pretty close. It's amazing. So besides that, we've got card acquisition. Now, card acquisition is faster than Hearthstone, slower than Spellweaver. It's a little, you got that little bit of pay to win thing, which comes with every card game. And honestly, it's not noticeable until you get up to about rank 5 or higher, and even then, if you don't have a complete deck, you can still power through, and you get legendaries every season as you get to rank 5, which I think you can definitely do with a little bit of practice. You can get up to rank 5, since you've got the win streaking thing from Hearthstone, so you can get up to rank 5 and get your free legendary. That's really, really cool. So I love the card acquisition system. It's a little bit slow in my opinion, but it's not as slow as Hearthstone's, so I can't really complain on that, since Hearthstone is notorious for having a slow card acquisition rate, and Duelyst is about twice as fast. So I do like the card acquisition style. I think it's personally a little bit too slow, but that's just personal opinion. That, and I've been playing Spellweaver Solid for 6 months now, and that has the fastest card acquisition rate I've ever seen. So that does taint my view a little bit. But overall, I would highly recommend playing the game and trying it out. I think it's incredibly good, it's very addictive, and is a lot of fun if you like card games, especially if you like sort of turn-based strategy type games in general, since it takes a lot of inspiration from turn-based games as a general point, not just card games, and I think the game is definitely worth trying out. It's a lot of fun. I'll put the link to the website in the description, and also the link to the forums website, which is weird that those are separate. Yeah, the actual website has basically nothing on it. All the interesting stuff is on the forums, and they're not connected. It's odd. But anyway, I'll put those two websites in the description, so you can go read into it and check it out and see if it's something you actually want to play. Now, something interesting about this game is that there's a client, and then there's also a web browser version, which is weird. I don't think I've seen that before. I mean, other card games have probably done it. Actually, Shadow Era was a browser game, but it didn't have a client. So, basically, the way you can do it is you can have a client, which I'm currently using, because I prefer using a client. And the reason I do that is because my laptop has an integrated graphics card and an actual graphics card, which a lot of laptops do, and if I have it as a client, I can choose which one it runs on, which is nice. However, using the browser is very convenient, and a lot of people use the browser, like Snellion and Rajan use the browser. I know Snellion does, I don't know about Rajan, but he uses the browser, and it's very, very convenient, because you can just have it bookmarked and open it whenever you like, which is a cool feature. It's nice that you can do that. And the fact that you can use either or is really cool. It also means you can play Duelyst whenever you want to, on whatever computer you want to. You don't need to download it, which is really cool. So yeah, I really, really like that feature, and you get to choose which one you want to use it on. But anyway, that about does it for me. If you struggled all the way to the end of this video, congratulations, 75 minutes in. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, want to ask me any questions about the game in particular, then put it in the comment section below. But as for now, it's been Jotto, signing off.